You are looking at the aftermath of a private plane crash in a San Diego military community early this morning. The NTSB says the jet struck power lines and then collided with a house about 2 miles from the Montgomery Gibbs Executive Airport where it was planning to land. A number of vehicles caught fire after jet fuel rained down on the residential street. 6 people were on board the Cessna 550. The San Diego Fire Assistant Chief believes no one on the aircraft survived. Among those killed in the crash was music booking agent David Shapiro, according to the Associated Press. A fire official said it was foggy at the time of the crash, and air traffic control recordings show that the weather system was not working at the airport where the plane was attempting to land. Here's part of what the pilot told air traffic control shortly before the crash.
Got the Miramar automated weather for 0955 Zulu with wind calm, visibility 1/2, and indefinite ceiling 200.
All right, that doesn't sound great, but we'll give it a go.
Joining me now to discuss is CNN aviation correspondent Pete Montine and CNN safety analyst and former FAA safety inspector David Soucy. Pete, what more do we know about the leading up to the crash? And just listening to that recording, what does it mean to you?
The recording is really telling here, Anderson, and it says that the pilots used the weather report at nearby Marine Corps Air Station Miramar and that the weather was very poor. 200-foot cloud ceilings, a half-mile visibility, much too low to make what would be an acceptable landing in what's called instrument conditions, meaning pilots flying in sole reference to the instruments. The pilots used that weather report from Miramar and not Montgomery Gibbs Executive Airport, the point of their intended landing, because we learned this afternoon that that weather system at that airport had been out since Tuesday. But perhaps the biggest finding here is the finding this afternoon from the NTSB that this plane hit power lines before it slammed into that neighborhood. It was that low. We went back and looked at the flight tracking data, and if this plane was on the proper approach path at the point of the crash site, should have been at about 1,300 feet. The last return on the open source flight tracking sites shows the plane at 500 feet. Much too low here, and opens a whole can of worms when it comes to questions in this investigation.
Yeah, David, what stands out to you at this point?
Well, the fact that he was that low and the fact that this aircraft was a 1985 aircraft. Now, typically an aircraft will have ground position warnings that'll tell them how low they are to the ground. So I have a feeling that he really didn't know what altitude he was at the time. And typically you'd get a warning that says you're too low, you're at this many feet, you're at that many feet. But in 1985, that wasn't required on the aircraft. And I don't see that we've got any information that was upgraded as required in 1992 when aircraft after that level had to have it installed.
So it should have had a automatic warning with an upgrade.
Correct. Yeah, if it had been upgraded to that new system, it would have had ground positioning radar, which tells it how far it is off the ground. And if you get too close and you're out of that ILS, it'll tell you you're too low, you're too high, wherever it is, it'll tell you where you're at with it. And it doesn't appear to me that he had that with him. But again, that's a backup system. That's after the fact that you're not where you're supposed to be in the first place. So the critical thing that stands out to me is, once again, FAA facility, the ASOS, the weather reporting, the automated weather reporting, was not working at the airport. And in that area, the fog moves so quickly, you really have to have localized. 3 miles isn't even enough to get a good weather report of what's going on at that airport.
Pete, I didn't understand. You were saying that it should have been at more than 1,000 feet of elevation, but it was at 500. How high was it when it struck power lines?
That is the big question here, Anderson. We know the power lines were not much higher topographically in that canyon there near the neighborhood. And so this is something that investigators will really key in on, why this flight was so low. We were able to interpolate this by looking at what's called the approach plate. It's essentially like a dance by numbers card that pilots use to descend them down to the runway if they're in what's called instrument conditions, meaning they can't see the ground until the last second. They're in clouds. They're only flying in reference to what's in front of them, what the indications are on the instrument panel there. And if you interpolate that, if you sort of extend the path out, the plane should have been at about 1,300 feet there. Now, the plane can do something called a step-down approach instead of following a gradual glide path down to the runway. But even still, the weather report at the time exceeds the minimum. meaning that there's a legal baseline that the plane can't continue into if the weather is so bad. This weather was below the minimum, meaning that it couldn't have gone in there. This flight theoretically should have landed at what's called an alternate, meaning divert to another airport where you can make a successful landing, play the ace, find a place that has a better weather condition, and land there.
Pete Muntean, David Susi, thanks very much. We'll try to learn more.